Welcome to a mental health break. I'm your host and author of the book, Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health, Vincent A. Lanci.
And I'm Evan Pulliam, frequent guest and loving to be back on the show here. Mr. Lanci, thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you back, Evan. I am excited to launch another episode of COVID Talks for you all. But first, I would like to discuss why I started this platform. When I was 21 years old, I was the victim of a hit-and-run accident while on foot. After coming out of a coma and suffering from a traumatic brain injury, or you may know of as a TBI, I soon realized that it was time to put my mental health on a very high pedestal. This transformative experience has led me to create this podcast that is all things mental health. It has also led me to create my new book, Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health. Would it add value to your life to hear mental health professionals and advocates share their authentic stories relating to mental health? If you answered yes, you came to the right place. I want to start by congratulating you for making your mental health a priority. It is time for another episode of COVID Talks, and I am excited to bring back this guest from episode 32. I will continue to bring back previous guests to reconnect with you all and highlight their experiences during the COVID-19 lockdown. By doing so, their stories will add immediate value to you all. Today's guest is someone who I admire for many reasons, including his courage to share his personal story to help others live an improved and happier life. Evan Pulliam shared his story back on season 2, and he's back again, but this time to help you through this difficult lockdown. He talks about moving to a new state, new job, and so much more that will relate to many of you. So allow me to now introduce Evan Pulliam. Evan, it's great to see you again, and thank you for coming back on the show.
Yeah, Vinny, it's great to be here. I was really excited to be on the first episode, and I'm glad to be back. This is a lot of fun, and I think you're doing some great work here. So, 30 episodes later or something like that, man. That's wild. Good to be here.
Would you mind please reintroducing yourself to our listeners and sharing part of your story before we dive in and get going? And also, please do share your role relating to mental health.
Yeah. Well, my role relating to mental health is that I'm a human being. And so obviously, mental health is an issue in my life. I've been on a path to try and calm my brain and sort of even out the roller coaster of the ups and downs of living for the last 35 years. And, I don't know that makes me a qualified professional, but it certainly makes me a qualified individual. And so I'm happy to share my story. I'm an advertiser by day and a video gamer by night, and well, actually mostly by day as well too. And I'm just here to have a little bit of fun and talk about my story a little bit. See if there's anything I can add to other people's lives during this pandemic, and see if we can help them out a little bit.
You absolutely can. And I like how you started that where I'm a human being. Everyone needs to somewhat prioritize their mental health. It doesn't have to be full-on mental health advocacy like you and I, but you are a person, so mental health is a part of your life. Thank you for sharing it that way. I think it's a great time here to hop in to the main event. As you remember, on each episode with a new guest, I go through a series of questions called the main event. For COVID Talks episodes, we will have a main event of its own. You ready to go, Evan?
Yeah, man, let's dive into it.
Great. So let's begin the show with getting into how your mental health has been affected from the pandemic overall.
Oh man, the pandemic has taken a lot from me this year. I've been through a lot. I had to put my dog down early in the year. I lost my job. I haven't been able to find a good steady job throughout the pandemic. And every time I think I do, something changes. So what looks like a 2 or 3 month engagement that was going to be something full time turned into just a 2 or 3 month engagement that's helping me, sort of move through. And so with that, again, it's been a roller coaster. My mental health has been everywhere from the lowest of the low and contemplating suicide to the highest of the high and feeling like I'm on top of the world and ready to take on anything. Um, I think that being, under the sort of microscope of living in your own world and not being able to truly interact in public, it brings a lot of your own sort of mental demons to the forefront, because that's really all you have time to focus on. And 2020 has really been a microscope for all those little demons, if you will.
Yeah, you put that very well. It's been certainly a change because, like you said, the limited social interaction. But of your whole experience thus far, what has been the most difficult part of the 2020 pandemic for you?
Oh man, I think the human interaction, random human interaction. I think that right now everything has become very, very segmented and very, specifically me. I'm living in very much my own little world that doesn't really bump into a whole lot of other worlds, which means that there's a lot of perspective that I'm missing. I'm not hearing other people's points of view, and the points of view that I am seeing, are catered. It's all through social media or through news channels or through information that I can gather, rather than just information that kind of happens. I'm not overhearing a conversation and then figuring out what that means in the context of my own world. I'm watching somebody try to get a reaction out of me, whether that's positive or negative,
Right.
for a viewer count. And I have to be conscious of that, because media has a point to it, and human interaction doesn't necessarily. You could just randomly give somebody a high five, just be like, "Hey man, hope you're having a great day," and move on. And that connection, that transfer of energy is a very real thing. Just saying "Hey, good job" to a stranger on the internet doesn't quite have the same umph to it. I mean, you don't get to see a smile, you don't get to have a real connection with somebody. Well, and that's not true. You can still have real connections. It's just not
I know
as
what you mean.
as
Yeah.
tactile, in my opinion, and that's been very tough. I don't consider myself necessarily an extrovert, 100%, but I think that the lack of situations for extroversion, I'm noticing that maybe I was more of an extrovert than I thought.
Yeah, you said that very well. And I liked really how you started with the high five, the smile. You never know what somebody is going through on any given day. By you giving that random act of kindness to somebody, you don't know how much that could really improve someone's day who they could be having the worst day of their entire life. But you went
Uh,
ahead, threw them a high five. That interaction went a long way.
well, yeah. Now, I mean, like, that's scary now.
Hmm.
And I think that's the weirdest thing. Like,
Crazy.
maybe that's the hardest part of the pandemic, is that now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to be, on a Zoom call and video and everything, but we're in different states. Like, if I were to fly to you right now to do this podcast, we'd be at serious risk of transmission of some kind of disease. And that's not something that I had thought about beforehand. Now, giving that random high five to somebody, you could have just literally contracted COVID. And so that it's
Crazy.
we're having to find new ways, and that's, I think, you know the the good thing to come out of it. And in any situation, that's bad, there's always we have to find new ways to connect now, which means that when and if we aren't so scared to have human interaction again because of the risk, that we're also going to have all these new ways of interacting on top of the old great ways. Like, a hug is going to have so much more value when we get into an era where we're not, where hugging isn't dangerous again.
I'm with you.
um and I think that's going to be pretty cool. But it's right now it's just a weird transitional time, and I think having to rely on ourselves intrinsically is tough. Um, yeah, it's just tough.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out of the air high five phase, if you will, which is the right now, the no real high fives. But soon enough, as I'm pretty optimistic about the future here. But you mentioned you battled some adversity, and I appreciate you sharing that because it will relate to people listening on the loss of job, the dog, a lot of change going on. What are some ways that
Yeah.
you have been coping with the additional change and stress from this 2020 pandemic?
I picked up an Xbox. I got lucky, in that I've been able to find something that, you know, call it reconnecting to something that I've lost. I've always enjoyed video games, but being stuck inside and leaving the mind to just wander can be dangerous. I think that that's been one of the hardest parts, you know, throughout uh, throughout at least the initial pandemic. Was I was living alone at that point, and that was very difficult. You can have the nicest apartment and the most comfortable couch, but if you aren't stable inside your mind, um, that comfortable couch can become a prison cell, just the same as anything else.
I really like how you
Um,
put that.
and so it was, being able to get out of that and put my mind into something else. It's solving puzzles, it's living in another story, and not just any games. These really long, in-depth stories. You know, Shout out to Red Dead Redemption 2 for easily one of the best storylines that's been produced in a video game in the last 5 years. Um, and that was, I mean, so I think diving into other stories, just like the interaction with other people, putting my mind into some other place, has been helpful, and finding structured places for my mind to go is even better. Early on, I think the idea about pandemic was similar to like the old hurricane parties at the University of Tampa. It's like, oh man, there's bad things coming. Well, we better stock up on booze and get ready to have a party for a couple days and wait for this to pass. And that was kind of the initial pandemic. Was like, oh yeah, this will pass. We'll just stock up on booze and then move on. And then that turned into like, man, I've been drinking for like 3 days, and not like wasted, but just
Yeah.
like there was no reason not to have a beer, and that you know I don't think that was as productive. It certainly wasn't. I mean, it got me through a couple days, but I think
Right,
that
right.
writing or reading a book or writing has helped me more than trying to forget that we're in a pandemic.
Mhm.
And so for that, I think the productivity, feeling like I have some kind of a purpose and sort of forcing myself into a purpose, even if that is, hey, let's just, put in a couple more hours. Let's just get to the next checkpoint. Let's do something.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's kind of been the big saving grace. It certainly hasn't helped my waistline. I should probably have dedicated more time to like a new pair of shoes and like walking. But hey, if I'm still here, I can always make a step towards health. And if I'm dead, I can't. So, playing video games, if that's keeping me alive right now, sweet. I'll keep playing it, man. I'll save that next princess.
I like what you said there too, where you found something that's keeping you in the right mindset. And that's very important. You mentioned living alone didn't really have that for you. And attesting as someone who's by themselves pretty much the entire day, you need to find a way to get yourself in that mindset. Or I really liked how you put the couch could be like a jail cell, right? That couch, you're your own worst enemy. You're thinking of these thoughts way more now because of the isolation you have with everybody. What keeps me going really is making sure I exercise, even if it's just a walk. It helps
Yeah.
me just think more positive thoughts. I also tend to drown myself in work just to not think about thoughts. But Zoom calls like this, they go a long way for me when I do these podcasts, try to record a couple a week. I get
Hmm.
that human interaction that you mentioned we've been missing. But let's look on the bright side here, Evan. What are some positives that ended up coming out of this 2020 pandemic for you?
Oh man, there's definitely a silver lining to every cloud and all the wonderful cliches that come with that. But I think that that really it is this analyzation for me to be able to sit here with you and say I've been able to see how my life has been in this pandemic, to be able to actually analyze that there have been differences in the way that I can feel just because I'm not out and around people. And it's I think that that self-actualization has been very helpful. Um, on top of that, I have been challenged to work in new ways. I managed to have a political slogan picked up in Georgia, which is states away. But here I am writing slogans for a Senate runoff race in a state that I just moved from, which has been pretty cool. So I think that this internet connection, the ability to do something for somebody in another state, has
Hmm.
been helpful. I think that the small pods of people that I have interacted with, safely, um, have been more meaningful than just like, hey, yeah, we're all going out to the bar and getting drinks on a random night. I think that my interactions have been more meaningful because they're slower. It's not we've got a million things to do. It's we have one thing to do,
Very
and let's
limited,
make
yeah.
this one thing count. And so that's been pretty sweet. Um, and heck, man, it's snowboarding season right now. I managed to make enough money to pay for my lift ticket and get some new snowboarding gear, which,
Nice.
again, in the Colorado sense of things, that's really about all you need. When I told my snowboard tech that, like, yeah, I've got gas in my car, no job holding me back, and a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, he was like, dude, what more do you need in life, bro? And I was like, yeah, that's you're actually pretty spot on, dude. There's a lot that I could want, but right now, I mean, I've got what I need, and that's a pretty cool thing.
I like how you said finding the silver lining through every dark day. The way I look at it means if today is that dark, tomorrow is going to be brighter. The sun's going to be out tomorrow. We're going to do it that way. And alluding back to your point before, finding something that's keeping you going. You're enjoying the video games.
Yeah,
Now you get snowboarding. You got to find a way to keep yourself in a positive mental headspace. But let's talk about how your work life was affected by this pandemic. And let's start back in March when the pandemic
yeah,
began.
yeah. So I mean, I think that well, let me put it this way. There was a quote from Andy Warhol that said that people in our generation are going to have to work like 5 jobs. Something I'm butchering this quote, but the idea was that people are going to have 5 jobs. In the next generation, people are going to have 5 jobs that they do all at the same time. There's this amount of work that we as a generation have to complete, to compare to the generations before us. That is just it's just wild. But what that means is that we all have to be flexible.
Mhm.
In our lifetimes, the idea of just doing one thing for 60 years and then getting a pension off of that thing to support us the rest of our lives, that that idea is really gone. Um, there might be some folks that are able to pull that off. There might be an accountant somewhere that has that
Mhm.
kind of job stability. But at least for me and for a lot of the folks in my generation, um, it's being flexible. And when I moved to Colorado, I mean, I did not have a job in my career field. I'm an advertiser. I love advertising. I want to write about your product more than I want to write about my own life. And when I got out here, I didn't have a job doing that, but I was able to find a job lugging bags at the airport and working at the for like some hotel transportation, and that was sweet. It was going to allow me to live my dream of being in Colorado and get through snowboard season.
There you go.
And that was it. That's all. I moved out here with the dream of living in Colorado, and then pandemic hit. Nobody's flying anymore. Nobody's hosting events anymore. I'm not able to do event prep. So the rug was really just pulled out from under me completely. And then shortly thereafter, a friend from college hit me up and said, "Hey, you want to try and sell some PPE?" And what a wonderful time. I mean, the world is in a pandemic. We need, protective equipment everywhere. That seemed like a wonderful thing. And it was a great opportunity. I learned that I'm definitely not cut out um, for the behind the scenes rigors of a sales gig. Like, I can sell you something that I have right now, but if I got to get it from China and lie to you about it coming in 2 weeks, that's not good for me. I need to be honest and upfront at all times, and that I learned that. All right, doing sales is not going to be my thing. Um, so it was on to the next job. Started writing for a tile company. Like, who, I don't know how many other people out there know the ins and outs of luxury vinyl panel flooring. But yeah, I mean, I was able to pick up a job for a couple months that looked like it was going to be promising and turned into a full time, and that changed. So again, pandemic pulled the rug out. So that's I've had 4 different jobs this year alone, just to try and make it through a pandemic situation. I think it means grabbing whatever opportunities you have, and don't feel bad at all about making whatever money you can in any situation. This is a wild time, and that means that we gotta be wild to get what we need. You don't have to follow every rule that you thought was the rule. Go out there and make your money in some way. But yeah, you're gonna need it somehow. The government isn't helping us out, so you got to get out there and make it on your own, and that means get back to hustling. I mean, I haven't hustled this hard to just try and make jobs happen since, like, back in college.
Yeah.
Back when I was trying to find a career. I found a career and it was great, and I would jump back into it in a heartbeat. But at the same time, you got to survive, and I think that 2020 has been a lot more about survival, than it has been about thriving. Um, and so yeah, I'm surviving, and I'm still here, so that means I get to survive for another little while.
That was an incredibly inspiring answer, and I appreciate you sharing an honest response to how difficult certain times were because of how many people listening on are in those exact shoes. And you reminded me of the hustle times. There was a point where I was writing the first book, Left for Dead, and my jobs were morning teaching ESL, 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. Then I'm doing construction. Then I'm going to do busboy, server, expo work at a restaurant. I'm working 3 jobs in that day because my goals at the time were I need to have the ability to write this book. I can't have a real commitment. I need to just find a way and make it happen. So I respect your hustle. But Evan, we all have kids in our lives, whether it be our own children, siblings, cousins, or friends. What advice do you have for everyone listening on to help with the mental health of the children in their lives from the experiences you've had?
Um, well, first, I think that, yes, we all have children in our lives, and even more importantly, is to remember that we are all still children. You are still a kid. You might be a 35-year-old kid, you might be an 80-year-old kid, but you are still that same kid, and you might have figured out ways to not feel scared, or to not be worried, or to not get hurt, or to take care of your boo-boos, or whatever it is. But those very same things are still very present in your life, and so be to those kids or those children in your life the person that you needed, even if they don't necessarily need that from you. I mean, try and be the mentor, the friend, the helpful, kind soul that you needed, even if you didn't have it. uh, and I think that right now that can come in the form of offering purpose, um, offering some kind of structure. I mean, I'm lost as I've ever been now at 35. I couldn't imagine being 5 or 10 during these times right now, and having to rely on adults who are absolutely losing their minds. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're like, all the adults have gone completely crazy, and we're trying to then pass off like this air of it's all okay, and good for like good. We the kids need to look up and think that things are okay. But at the same time, don't forget that you are still that kid, and you got to make things okay for yourself too. You know, the
Yes.
like, you can't put the air mask on a kid if you don't have your air mask on. Like that, I guess that's the idea. You got to help yourself. You got to be able to breathe as well if you're going to help somebody else breathe. And
Amazing.
so like, take care of your own inner child, and then be the friend to other children that you needed, or that you got.
You can't
Um,
you can't be supportive of others until you're supportive for yourself as well. Just like you're saying, you got to be kind to yourself. You got to be your own best friend too. And right back to your point where how crazy it must be to be a kid right now. These kids already have their entire life out of their hands, very reliant, like you said, on the adult figures. And the only thing they really were accustomed to was going to school, see your friends, playing the playground. And now that's just stopped, halted, which is really why
Gosh.
I made the big mental health push during the pandemic with the books. The kids' book's done; it's just not out yet. But Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health. What I did was I included a deeper dive section to help parents who have children battling these mental health disparities in each chapter, so they can help them, along with the social distancing tips to help them right now. I really appreciate that response there. So thank you, Evan, for coming back on the show for another incredible episode. I know the listeners are going to see all the value in your show. I especially love that response right there on the last talking point with the kids. I like how you really encouraged everybody to be flexible with your response to how the work life was. Get out there and get it. Don't make any excuses. I like how you also encouraged everybody out there where if something's not working out, change it. You said living alone wasn't for you. You weren't in the right headspace. You went out there, you made a move, and now you're finding things that are keeping you going. I obviously appreciate your honest testimonial, and through your vulnerability, it's going to help so many people. But as you remember, it is time for the last word. And I also do this on my other podcast series, what it's really like to be an entrepreneur too, because I want the listeners to really get to know the guests I bring on. Is there something that you would like to share with everyone that we did not get to touch on yet today?
oh man.
Touched on a lot. It was a good
We
one.
did. We've touched on a lot. I think, you know, call a friend, like, just somebody you haven't talked to in a while. Yeah, the phone rings both ways, but call them. Just do it. Somebody is out there that might be going through something silently, and they may seem like it's all fun and games. I mean, we live in a world of posting only the best pictures to your Instagram and posting only the fun stuff to your Facebook. That's often just a cover up. So call them up, and just talk to them. Say what's up. This has been a crazy year. Nobody's come out of this thing unscarred or unscathed. We've all been tested. So yeah, I mean, keep it up.
Oh, yeah, I want to add on to that. Shout out to Tony Alexander. His thing is check up from the neck up. You got to give your buddies a checkup from the neck up, and you never know. The people who are always smiling in front of you may be the people who really haven't smiled in a while. It may be, as you say, a mask. Would you now please take the time to share your social media, website, any ways for our listeners to learn more about you, request your services, follow your endeavors?
Yeah, hire me. I will write anything. I will make your stuff sound so witty and fun, and I will increase the sales on your products and all kinds of stuff. Any advertising needs, find me at heymrbowtie.com. You can find me on Instagram at heymrbowtie. And yeah, we'll talk anything ads, or we'll just get silly and talk about life. Holler at me. I'm here to help.
Be sure to check out all of that great content. And it is social media time for the show, and we're on whichever platform you like to use. On LinkedIn, we're at A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci. On Instagram and Facebook is at A Mental Health Break. And on Twitter, it's at Podcasts by Lanci. So you have updates from this show and what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. If you check out any of my books, DM me. I would love to hear from you all. We have Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health, Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption, and How to Transform Your Mindset When the Norm is Changed. All are on my website now, which is vincentalanci.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate the show 5 stars and continue listening by subscribing. I'll see you next time on a mental health break